Ever bought ginger at the grocery store, used a little piece, and then watched the rest shrivel up in your refrigerator? What if I told you that one single ginger root from the supermarket could multiply into hundreds, even thousands of pounds of fresh ginger over time? It sounds almost too good to be true, but ginger is one of the most generous plants you can grow. And today I'm going to walk you through the complete process of turning one piece of store-bought ginger into an endless supply. From selecting the right rhizome to harvesting your own homegrown ginger, I am covering every single step. Plus, stick around to the end where I will show you how to make the most incredible fresh ginger tea you have ever tasted using your harvest. Let us get started. Ginger is one of those crops that every gardener should have in their repertoire. And here is the thing most people do not realize. You do not need a tropical climate or a fancy greenhouse to grow it successfully. With the right techniques and a little patience, you can grow ginger almost anywhere in the country. Once you understand how this amazing plant works, you will see why one small piece can truly become a lifetime supply. Now, before we dive into the actual growing process, I want to explain exactly what ginger is and why it multiplies so incredibly well. Ginger is not actually a root, even though we call it a ginger root. What you are buying at the grocery store is a rhizome, which is basically an underground stem. Think of it like a horizontal stem that grows beneath the soil surface. And this is really important to understand, because it explains why ginger is so prolific. When you plant a piece of ginger, that rhizome does not just sit there and grow one plant. It spreads outward, branching and expanding in multiple directions, creating new rhizomes as it goes. Each of those new rhizomes can then be divided and replanted to create even more plants. So when I say one piece of ginger can turn into 1,000 pounds, I am not exaggerating. If you were to take every single piece of ginger you harvest each year, divide it all, and replant it the following season, the multiplication is absolutely staggering. Here is how the math works out. One piece of ginger, maybe 3 or 4 inches long, will typically produce anywhere from 1 to 2 pounds of fresh ginger in a single growing season. That does not sound like much, but here is where it gets exciting. If you take that 1 to 2 pounds, divide it into planting pieces, and replant all of it the next year, you could easily have 20 to 40 plants. Those 20 to 40 plants will give you somewhere between 20 and 80 pounds of ginger. Divide and replant again, and you are looking at hundreds of plants and hundreds of pounds of ginger. Do this for a few years, and you can see how the numbers get absolutely massive. Of course, most of us do not have the space to grow that much ginger, but the point is that this one small investment from the grocery store can keep giving back year after year after year. Now let us talk about selecting and preparing your ginger pieces for planting, because this first step is absolutely critical to your success. Not all ginger is created equal, and the piece you choose to start with can make or break your entire growing season. When you go to the grocery store, you want to look for ginger rhizomes that are plump, firm, and have tight skin. Avoid any pieces that look shriveled, dried out, or wrinkly. Those rhizomes have lost too much moisture and may not sprout reliably. You also want to look for what we call growth buds, or eyes. These look like small pointed nubs on the surface of the rhizome, sometimes with a slight greenish or yellowish tint. These eyes are where your new shoots will emerge from, so the more eyes you see on a piece of ginger, the better. Now here is something really important that a lot of people do not know. Much of the ginger sold in conventional grocery stores has been treated with a growth inhibitor to prevent it from sprouting on the shelf. This can make it much harder to get going. What I recommend is buying your ginger from an organic grocery store, a natural foods co-op, or even better, an Asian market. Asian markets often have the freshest ginger with the most active growth buds, and it is usually significantly cheaper too. I have had fantastic success with ginger from my local Asian grocery, and it typically costs about half of what the regular supermarket charges. Once you have selected your ginger, You want to let it sit out at room temperature for a day or two. This helps wake up those growth buds and gets the rhizome ready to sprout. Some people recommend soaking the ginger in water overnight to help remove any potential growth inhibitors. And while I am not entirely sure how effective this is, it certainly does not hurt. I usually give mine a good overnight soak in lukewarm water just to be safe. When it comes to cutting your ginger into planting pieces, you want each piece to be at least 1 to 2 inches long, with at least 1 or 2 visible growth buds. You can plant larger pieces if you prefer, and honestly, larger pieces tend to give you a head start because they have more stored energy to fuel that initial growth. I typically cut mine into pieces that are about 2 to 3 inches long, each with 2 or 3 eyes. After cutting, and this is a step that many people skip, you want to let those cut pieces sit out and dry for a day or two. This allows the cut surfaces to form a callus, which helps prevent rot when you plant them. Just set them on a paper towel in a warm spot out of direct sunlight and let them dry until the cut edges look slightly dried and healed over. This simple step can dramatically improve your success rate. Now let us talk about sprouting your ginger indoors, because this is where the magic really starts to happen. You can absolutely plant ginger pieces directly into the ground or into containers, but I have found that pre-sprouting them indoors gives you a significant head start and much better results overall. The reason pre-sprouting works so well is that ginger is a tropical plant. It is native to Southeast Asia, where temperatures are warm and humid year-round. Here in the United States, most of us have a limited growing season, so giving your ginger a head start indoors means more time for those rhizomes to expand and multiply before the weather turns cold. To pre-sprout your ginger, you are going to need a shallow container, some moist potting mix, and a warm location. I like to use a plastic storage container. Something like an $8 Sterilite container from any big box store works perfectly. Fill the bottom with about 2 to 3 inches of a good quality, moisture-retaining potting mix. You want the mix to be moist but not soggy. When you squeeze a handful, it should hold together like a snowball, but no water should drip out. Take your prepared ginger pieces and lay them on top of the potting mix with the eyes facing upward. Then cover them with another inch or so of the moist potting mix. You do not want to bury them too deep, just enough to keep them surrounded by that warm, moist environment. Now here is the key to success with this method. Ginger needs warmth to sprout, and I mean real warmth. The ideal temperature for sprouting ginger is between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If your house is cooler than that, you might want to use a seedling heat mat underneath your container. I place mine on top of my refrigerator where the warmth from the motor keeps things nice and toasty, and that works wonderfully. You also want to create a humid environment, so place a lid on your container but leave it slightly cracked to allow for air circulation. Check on your ginger every few days to make sure the potting mix stays moist. If it starts to dry out, give it a light misting with a spray bottle. Now here is where you need some patience. Ginger can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to start showing signs of life, sometimes even longer if conditions are not quite warm enough. Do not give up on it. I have had pieces that took a full 5 weeks before I saw any green shoots, and they went on to produce beautiful, healthy plants. When should you start this process? That depends on where you live and when you plan to move your ginger outdoors. Ginger cannot tolerate any frost, and it really does not like cool temperatures at all. You should not plant ginger outside until nighttime temperatures are consistently above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. For most of the country, that means sometime between mid-May and mid-June. I recommend starting your ginger indoors about 8 to 10 weeks before you plan to transplant it outside. So if your last frost date is around mid-April and you expect warm nights by mid-May, you would want to start sprouting your ginger indoors sometime in early to mid-March. This gives your ginger plenty of time to develop strong shoots and a healthy root system before it goes into the garden. Once your ginger pieces have sprouted and you see green shoots that are a few inches tall, they are ready for the next phase. But do not rush this. Bigger, stronger shoots will transplant better and establish more quickly than tiny, weak ones. I like to wait until my shoots are at least 3 to 4 inches tall before I even think about moving them. Now let us talk about planting your sprouted ginger and creating the ideal growing conditions, because where and how you plant makes a huge difference in your final harvest. The first thing you need to decide is whether you are going to grow your ginger in the ground or in containers. Both methods work well, but each has its advantages. Growing in the ground allows your ginger to spread more freely and generally produces larger harvests if you have good soil and a long growing season. Container growing gives you more control over the soil conditions, makes it easier to bring plants indoors if you live in a cooler climate, and is perfect if you have limited space or poor garden soil. If you are growing in containers, choose pots that are at least 12 inches wide and 12 inches deep. Ginger rhizomes spread horizontally, so width is actually more important than depth. I personally love using fabric grow bags for ginger because they provide excellent drainage and air circulation to the roots, and they are inexpensive. A 5-gallon or 7-gallon fabric pot works wonderfully for 1 or 2 ginger plants. Whether you are planting in the ground or in containers, ginger needs loose, rich, well-draining soil. Heavy clay soil will cause your rhizomes to rot, and compacted soil will restrict their growth. I like to amend my planting area with plenty of compost and some perlite or coarse sand to improve drainage. A good quality potting mix works great for containers, and I usually mix in about 20% perlite to ensure excellent drainage. When it comes to actually planting your sprouted ginger, you want to plant the rhizomes about 2 inches deep with the green shoots pointing upward. Space multiple plants about 8 to 12 inches apart to give them room to spread. Ginger does not like to be crowded, and giving each plant adequate space will result in larger rhizomes at harvest time. By the way, if you are finding this helpful so far, take a second to subscribe so you do not miss future videos. All right, let us keep going. Sunlight is another important consideration. In its native tropical habitat, ginger grows as an understory plant beneath taller trees, which means it actually prefers partial shade rather than full blazing sun. This is great news for those of us with shadier gardens. Ginger does best with morning sun and afternoon shade, or dappled sunlight throughout the day. If you are growing in containers, this gives you the flexibility to move your plants around to find that perfect spot. I grow mine on my covered patio, where they get about 4 to 6 hours of filtered sunlight, and they absolutely thrive. Now let us talk about ongoing care and maintenance, because ginger is relatively low maintenance once established, but there are a few things you need to stay on top of to get the best harvest possible. Watering is probably the most important factor in growing healthy ginger. Remember, this is a tropical plant that loves moisture. You want to keep the soil consistently moist, but never waterlogged. Soggy soil will cause your rhizomes to rot faster than almost anything else. I water my ginger plants deeply whenever the top inch of soil feels dry to the touch. During hot summer weather, this might mean watering every 2 to 3 days. During cooler or cloudier periods, once a week might be plenty. One thing I have learned over the years is that ginger really appreciates consistent moisture rather than cycles of drought and flooding. If you let the soil dry out completely and then drench it, you are going to stress the plant and potentially damage the developing rhizomes. A layer of mulch on top of the soil works wonders for maintaining that consistent moisture level. I use about 2 to 3 inches of straw or shredded leaves around my ginger plants, and it makes a noticeable difference in how often I need to water. Humidity is another factor that ginger absolutely loves. If you are growing indoors or in a dry climate, you might want to mist your ginger leaves every few days or place a tray of water with pebbles near your plants to increase the ambient humidity. I grow mine in a fairly humid area, so this is not something I worry about too much, but if you notice the leaf tips turning brown and crispy, low humidity is often the culprit. When it comes to fertilizing, ginger is a moderately heavy feeder. Those expanding rhizomes need plenty of nutrients to reach their full potential. I feed my ginger plants every 3 to 4 weeks during the growing season with a balanced organic fertilizer. Something like a 5-5-5 or a 4-4-4 works great. You can also use compost tea or fish emulsion if you prefer liquid fertilizers. Just be careful not to overdo it with nitrogen-heavy fertilizers, as too much nitrogen will give you lots of lush green leaves but smaller rhizomes, and the rhizomes are what we are after. One thing that surprises a lot of people is that ginger plants can get quite tall. Healthy ginger plants will send up reed-like stems that can reach 3 to 4 feet in height, sometimes even taller in ideal conditions. These stems have beautiful, glossy green leaves that arch gracefully outward. Even if you never harvested a single rhizome, ginger would be worth growing just as an ornamental plant. It really is that attractive. As the growing season progresses, you will notice your ginger plants putting on more and more growth. New shoots will emerge from the soil as the rhizomes expand underground. This is exactly what you want to see. Each new shoot represents new rhizome growth happening beneath the surface. By late summer, a single planting piece might have 5, 6, or even more stems growing from it. And all of that green growth above ground translates to rhizome expansion below. Now let us talk about some common problems you might encounter and how to solve them. Because even though ginger is generally an easy plant to grow, issues can pop up from time to time. The most common problem I see with ginger is root rot, and it almost always comes down to overwatering or poor drainage. If your ginger leaves start turning yellow and wilting, even though the soil is moist, root rot is likely the culprit. The first thing to do is check your drainage. If water is sitting in the saucer beneath your container or pooling around your plants in the ground, you need to fix that immediately. For container plants, make sure your pot has adequate drainage holes and that you are not letting it sit in standing water. If the rot has not progressed too far, you can sometimes save the plant by letting the soil dry out more between waterings. In severe cases, you may need to dig up the rhizome, cut away any soft or mushy sections, let the cuts dry and callus over, and replant in fresh, well-draining soil. Another issue you might encounter is yellowing leaves that are not related to overwatering. If your ginger leaves are turning yellow, but the soil drainage is fine, it could be a nutrient deficiency. Ginger that is running low on nitrogen will often show yellowing in the older, lower leaves first. A dose of balanced fertilizer usually clears this up within a week or two. It could also be a sign that your plant is getting too much direct sunlight. Remember, ginger prefers partial shade, and harsh afternoon sun can cause leaf burn and yellowing. Pests are generally not a major problem with ginger, which is one of the things I love about this plant. However, you might occasionally see aphids, spider mites, or fungus gnats. Aphids and spider mites can be controlled with a strong spray of water to knock them off the leaves, or with an application of insecticidal soap or neem oil. Fungus gnats are more of a nuisance than a serious threat, but they indicate that your soil is staying too moist. Letting the top inch of soil dry out between waterings usually takes care of them. If you notice your ginger is not growing as vigorously as you expected, temperature is often the issue. Ginger really does need warmth to thrive. If daytime temperatures are consistently below 70 degrees, or nighttime temperatures are dipping into the 50s, your ginger will grow very slowly or may even go dormant. There is not much you can do about outdoor temperatures, but if you are growing in containers, you can move them to a warmer location or bring them inside during cool spells. A seedling heat mat can also help container-grown ginger if your growing space tends to run cool. The good news is that if you follow the steps we have covered, keeping the soil moist but well drained, providing partial shade, fertilizing regularly, and maintaining warm temperatures, you should be able to avoid most of these problems entirely. Now let us get to the really exciting part, harvesting and storing your homegrown ginger. This is the moment you have been waiting for. And I have to tell you, the first time you dig up your own ginger and smell that incredible fresh aroma, you are going to be hooked for life. Ginger typically needs about 8 to 10 months from planting to reach full maturity. However, you do not have to wait that long to start enjoying your harvest. You can actually start harvesting what we call young ginger or baby ginger after about 4 months. Young ginger has thinner skin, a milder flavor, and is less fibrous than mature ginger. It is absolutely delicious and something you will almost never find in stores. To harvest young ginger, you simply reach into the soil at the edge of the plant, feel around for a rhizome, and snap off a piece. The plant will continue growing and producing more rhizomes, so you can keep harvesting small amounts throughout the season. For a full harvest of mature ginger, you want to wait until the leaves start to yellow and die back in late fall. This signals that the plant is going dormant and the rhizomes have reached their full size and flavor. At this point, you can dig up the entire plant. I like to use a garden fork for this because it is less likely to slice through the rhizomes than a shovel. Gently loosen the soil around the plant and lift the whole root mass out of the ground. What you will find when you dig up a mature ginger plant is truly amazing. That one small piece you planted in the spring will have multiplied into a large branching mass of rhizomes, often weighing 1 to 2 pounds or more. Shake off the excess soil and use a hose to gently wash away any remaining dirt. Let the rhizomes dry in a shady spot for a few hours before storing. Fresh ginger stores remarkably well. You can keep it in the refrigerator in a paper bag or wrapped in a paper towel inside a plastic bag for several weeks. For longer storage, you have a few options. You can freeze ginger whole or sliced, and frozen ginger actually grates beautifully straight from the freezer. You can also dehydrate ginger slices and grind them into your own ginger powder, which is far more potent than anything you will buy at the store. And of course, you want to save some of your best rhizomes for replanting next season. Store your seed ginger in a cool, dark place with good air circulation until you are ready to start the process all over again. Now for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. Once you have harvested your fresh ginger, you absolutely have to try making fresh ginger tea. I am not talking about the stuff you make from a tea bag. I mean real homemade ginger tea, made from rhizomes. You grew yourself. It is on a completely different level, and once you try it, you will never go back. Here is exactly how I make it. Take about a 2-inch piece of fresh ginger and slice it into thin coins. You do not even need to peel it if you scrubbed it clean. Bring about 4 cups of water to a boil in a small pot, then add your ginger slices. Reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. The longer you simmer, the stronger and spicier your tea will be. After simmering, strain the tea into mugs and add honey and a squeeze of fresh lemon juice to taste. Some people also like to add a cinnamon stick or a few whole cloves to the simmering water for extra flavor. This tea is not only absolutely delicious, but it is also incredibly soothing for your digestive system. I drink it whenever I feel a cold coming on or when my stomach is upset, and it works wonders. The best part is that 1 2-inch piece of ginger makes enough tea for the whole family, and when you are growing your own, you have an endless supply. I make this tea all winter long using ginger I harvested in the fall, and it has become one of my favorite things about growing this amazing plant. So that is everything you need to know about turning 1 piece of store-bought ginger into an endless supply of your own homegrown ginger. We covered how to select and prepare your rhizomes, how to pre-sprout them indoors for a head start, how to plant them and create ideal growing conditions, how to care for them throughout the season, how to troubleshoot common problems, and how to harvest and store your ginger for months of enjoyment. And now you know how to make the most incredible fresh ginger tea to warm you up all winter long. If you found this video helpful, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and rang the bell so you get notified whenever I post new gardening videos. I put out new content every week covering everything from vegetables to fruits to herbs, all designed to help you grow more of your own food at home. And if you have any questions about growing ginger or want to share your own tips and experiences, drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you, and I read every single comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Happy gardening!